Good, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Sitter Today, where we wrap the week's current affairs with the best political team on television from a very Auckland perspective. Warning, where's fair and balanced as Fox News. Joining me tonight, I'm a revolving panel of bloggers and Auckland opinion shapers. Here's the liberal lion of the left, blogger, author and political folk singer. His Molotov cocktails are made with Galbraith's homebrew. Life member of the Socialist Council of Wise Ents, Comrade Chris Trotter. And he could charm the pants back onto a prostitute. He defines diversity as having a semi-automatic weapon and a fully automatic one. The Darth Vader of the blogosphere, right-wing storm blogger, Cameron Slater. Welcome to you both. Coming up tonight, issue 1. The Māori Statutory Board is now taking the Auckland Super City to court over this fiasco. When will Rodney Hyde be publicly lynched in RTS Square? Issue 2. The Greens suffered the Stoners curse and turned up late. The Labour Party candidate reassures his community board he won't win. And the National Party candidate has no connection with the Asian electorate. Can the Botany by-election get any more uninspiring? Issue 3 tonight. Rumours of a new far-right political party launching in Epsom are circulating. Will Cameron Slater be announcing his candidacy? And we'll end the show on a final word, but let's kick things off with issue 1. So the mandatory Māori Statutory Board is now looking to take Auckland Super City to court to argue against the steep cuts the Super City has initiated against their budget. All the while, Rodney Hyde desperately attempts to distance himself from the fact he set this up. Chris, you were one of the first Liberals to attack the innate unfairness of 50-50 power sharing with an Indigenous population that can only make up 10% of the country. How will up to 38 unmandated Māori appointees on up to 19 committees go down with Aucklanders?
Well, I don't think it is going down very well.
Like a cup of cold sick.
Yes, yes. In the colloquial terminology that Cameron reminds us of, like a cup of cold sick. And I don't think it's going down very well in the country either. And I think once you put this alongside the growing unease about the Marine and Coastal Area Bill, the government really must be getting a little edgy about the whole Māori-Pākehā relations shtick. But to be fair to the Māori Statutory Board, it is only doing what Parliament has instructed it to do.
Absolutely.
And I just found it a little bit, I don't know what the word is, distasteful perhaps, to watch a council which had been working ostensibly alongside the people charged with setting this group up. This group had gone and got outside advice, which it had then turned into a draft budget and put it before the council. The council unanimously approved the budget.
At the Finance Committee, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a committee of the whole.
And you know, on the advice of their chief executive, they thought they were doing the right thing. And quite frankly, I can see why Liam Brown wanted unanimity, because this was actually a statutory responsibility which had been, in a sense, foisted on the elected body, but which they had to deal with. So better to do it unanimously than not. But then, of course, as councillors began to think,
realise how they're going to sell this
about what they had just done, they decided, you know, to get off this ship as quickly as possible.
I think what the most
and you can't really blame them for that. I mean, people who are elected have to get re-elected, and it's not as easy to get re-elected with a $3.4 million budget decision hanging over your head.
But here's the thing,
Cam, the Dark Lord of the Sith, Matthew Hooton, now represents the Māori Statutory Board. Is there an unholy alliance between corporate iwi and the right wing that the media are missing?
Well, Matthew Hooton's a political prostitute, and he'll take money from whoever was prepared to pay him. And Matthew's a friend of mine, and that's all.
That's what you say about your friends.
Exactly. You know, I'm a friend to all. But the important thing here about the Māori Statutory Board and why they're going to court is that they had a deal with Len. They went in and had a nice, quiet meeting with him, with the chief executive, and with his chief of staff, and they cut a deal under the rules which say a reasonable budget, and they thought they put together a reasonable budget. Len agreed to it. It was then slipped into the Finance Committee, off agenda, which is the thing that's annoyed people the most, and then lobbied very hard in that Finance Committee to be pushed through. no one at that point in time, because it was off agenda, had done any thinking, as Chris has alluded to, any thinking around the political ramifications of vesting A, so much power, and B, so much money in the Maori Statutory Board. I had actually admire the balls of the Maori Statutory Board for actually looking at the legislation, which no one, including the Labour Party, had bothered to look at. They were on the select committee too. They never raised this. They're the only one. Everyone says Maoris are dumb, but I tell you what, they're cunning as a robber's dog when it comes to filling their pockets. And they saw this loophole in there, and they went for it at 100 miles an hour.
Didn't they?
And they've retained very good advice.
Oh,
and it goes to court. I think they'll win.
Yes, I think they'll win too. And quite frankly,
which means rates are going to go up to pay for the folly.
The suggestion from the chairman of the statutory board that the council join with it in seeking a declaratory judgment isn't as silly.
No, it's clever, isn't it?
As the critics
They're
suggest.
not dumb.
Because, I mean, God help the poor judge, because suddenly the politics has landed on his desk. But that makes a lot of sense. If the government is going to wash its hands of this issue, as it has announced that it's intending to do, then someone has to make the decision. And I guess it does fall to the judiciary in these circumstances.
Well, they've only got the law to
go. Let's talk about that. Rodney Hyde threatened to bring down the government of Māori. We're given elected representation. Rodney Hyde was the minister who passed this compromise with the Māori appointees, and Rodney Hyde was the one who rammed this through Parliament with little scrutiny. Why is Rodney Hyde now saying it's not his fault?
Well, look, you've got to...
It's MMP.
Yeah, well, it's
called compromise.
Yes, it is that, but it's more than that. It's the nature of the agreement that John Key forged with
the Maori Party as well.
Quite different
political
entities. Now, as soon as Rodney won his point over the Maori seats on the council,
that was it. That was his win, and now somebody else's win.
And John Key then turned to Peter and said, right, well, okay, we understand you're upset. What can we do to make this right? And Peter, not being stupid, said, well,
how about a Maori statutory
board? We could have a statutory board. Yeah. And then, once again, with good advice, sat down and wrote something which I suspect the people who drafted the bill
didn't see it coming,
did
they?
Yeah, we're pretty damn sure that it wasn't going to be.
They thought there'd be
carefully.
2 or 3 boards.
Right.
Well, this is what they thought. They thought there'd be 2 or 3 committees. What they weren't counting on was Len Brown saying to all the councillors who were complaining about their $80,000 salary and, gee, couldn't we really pad that out? Len Brown saying to them, don't worry, I'll form lots of committees. There'll be committee chairs to be... chairmanships to be passed around. There'll be lots of meetings. You'll be able to claim.
So this is Len Brown's fault now, is it?
No, it is a sequence of errors in starting for Rodney Hyde, starting from the committee, starting from all of that, and then compounded by having 18 committees.
Let's rewind a little bit. I mean, if we're looking to sheet home the blame here, I don't see how you can go past the House of Representatives.
All of them.
Yes. You know, that's why I use the collective rather than any
Phil
particular
Twyford
party.
included.
Because, yes, every single member of Parliament had the bill in front of them.
Yep.
And nobody picked up the glaring...
Other than the bloggers, there were plenty of bloggers picking this up.
The glaring, what's the word, opportunity in the wording of the bill for things to go seriously awry.
Why is your good mate, right-wing pretty boy Cameron Brewer, trying to make this Len Brown's fault when it's Rodney Hyde's fault? Is pretty boy Brewer representing Auckland's interests, or is he representing Wellington's by politicising this?
Cameron Brewer is representing Cameron Brewer's interests.
Yes.
If Matthew Hooton is a political prostitute, Cameron Brewer is a political opportunist.
Yes.
And the person who has has the most influence over Cameron Brewer is the person who spoke to him last, or whichever blog he read before he actually...
So assumingly you.
Assumingly me.
Right.
So I just think Cameron Brewer has a strategy to keep himself and his brand in the headlines every week, 3 times a week, as a bare minimum, as possible, to seek re-election for another term in Iraqi, and then we'll see what happens after that.
And for goodness sake, you can't really.
And he's from the right anyway.
Blame Cameron Brewer for having a go at Len Brown. He is of the right. He is surrounded by
Len
people.
Brown's easy to have a smack at. I mean, honestly, he makes it easy.
Think pretty much the same way he does, and he's going
to
question to both of you. Is this fiasco the end of Rodney Hyde and Epsom?
No.
Surely. No?
No.
Not the end of Rodney Hyde and Epsom?
No.
Why would it be?
That's your wet dream, Bomber.
Why on earth would the citizens of Epsom, knowing full well that returning Rodney is an absolutely essential part of the right's electoral calculations, why would they let this deter them from doing so?
Because if they are that right wing and they're that narrow-minded, then they're going to look at 38 appointees at a cost of...
They're going to look at who's going to be governing New Zealand after election day, and they're going to vote accordingly.
And the other thing they're going to be looking at is that right now, at this point in time, the pile of horse manure is piled fair and squarely outside Len Brown's door.
Well, yeah, because Cameron Brewer keeps pushing it that way. Chris, who wins, who loses from this Rodney Hyde fiasco piece of legislation?
Oh, I think Len is probably the person who's taken the most hits over it. Rodney coming a close second, but it doesn't matter so much for Rodney, and it does matter, I think, for Len.
It matters hugely for Len because he's not going to be re-elected.
I wouldn't. That's running way ahead of the ball.
Thank you, panel. Issue 2. The Greens couldn't get their asses into gear. Labour's candidate jaw-droppingly assured his own local board he couldn't win, and Jamie Lee Ross has all the connection to the Asian electorate that Michael Laws does with the disabled athlete community. Has self-imposed incompetence just made botany an interesting by-election? Chris, why would you leave your nomination for a by-election right up until the cut-off period? How much of a home goal was the Greens not filling in their nomination on time, or did it save them a lot of money?
And getting caught in the same traffic in the area that they opposed.
Hilariously, yeah.
Well, this is one of the perennial, or perhaps triennial, traps for young players, which people who are raised in the traditions of the larger parties, who have no doubt had similar instances in their past, usually avoid making. From what I understand, the Greens had the required six signatures, which is also a mistake. You should have about 12 or 20 for precisely this reason, only to discover from the returning officer that one of the names no longer resided in the electorate. Now,
by one street.
Yes, and this was something they didn't pick up.
So not knowing the boundaries.
And they were hurriedly forced to find someone else, and because they were alerted very close to the cut-off point. I mean, they had a very limited amount of time in which to make good their error. I mean, as I say, the original mistake was to only get the signatures, not to double-check before you lodge your candidacy that they are all within the boundaries. The wise thing for anyone to do in these sort of situations is to get far more names than you need, so that if one of them has moved house, you're okay.
You can cover that. Cam, I've never seen you so aroused in agreeing with Brian Rudman. You were ecstatic about his criticism of the Labour candidate, Michael Woods, who astoundingly told his local board in his local newspaper he wasn't going to win botany and that wouldn't take him away from Mount Roskill. Is he eyeing up Phil Goff's electorate in case it suddenly becomes vacant if Labour lose the election?
Well, actually, I've got to pay a compliment to Michael Wood. He's far more animated as a human being than Phil Goff is. And certainly believes in some core Labour principles that Phil Goff has never believed in. So you've got to give that to Michael Wood.
Backhanded compliments aside.
Backhanded compliments aside. Look, this was his Melissa Lee moment when she proclaimed that she couldn't win and was coming second. That was a major faux pas, broadcast nationwide on television. And screamed from the rafters by the from left-wing hate blogs like yourself.
But that was in the heat of the moment, wasn't it?
Nevertheless,
this is more of a mistake because he actually wrote it.
Well, he wrote it and he said it multiple times, and then he bizarrely proclaimed that the big issue for the electorate was that he needed to ban penis lollies from the electorate. desperately clutching at something to be relevant for.
Yes, well, one hopes he wasn't clutching it.
We're going to move on.
It's very homoerotic show
Jamie
today.
Lee Ross has as much connection to the Asian
I don't
electorate
agree
in
with you
botany
on
as
that.
Michael Laws does with the disabled athlete community. With a Beijing-backed new migrant party and a strong local independent with Robert Goh, could a taken-for-granted botany electorate give National the fright managed into Labour?
Not a chance.
No.
Not a chance, Bomber.
No, look, in the United States, an election like this would be entirely unremarkable. A great many of the contests for the House of Representatives in the United States only have one candidate or one serious candidate. Because in the United States, both parties have effectively gerrymandered the districts to the degree that they are just either Democrat or Republican. There are a handful which are contestable. Mm-hmm. One could argue that they're only contestable within a general right-wing purview or a general left-wing purview. But what we've got in botany, I wouldn't say it's a gerrymandered seat, but the way that the boundaries have been drawn, they enclose a huge national party voting population.
Yeah.
There is a tiny little panhandle, if I can continue to use American terms, of Flatbush, I think it is, and one other suburb.
It's Otara.
Where you could,
it's not Flatbush.
Where you could put a Labour campaign in.
Yeah.
And that's where Michael's got all the signs up.
And where you could get a small chunk of the vote. But that's all. So Michael Wood is being honest, but he's breaking a cardinal rule of political
disillusions the workers.
Battles, and that is you never ever concede defeat. Everybody knows that you're going to lose, but when you say you're going to lose, you break the magic of politics. If you break the magic of politics, you might as well just stop and go back to work, because that magic is necessary for people to put in the hard yards.
Well, the thing is too, is Bomber says that Jamie Lee doesn't have a connection with the Asian community there, and I just think that's completely false. The New Citizens Party is an irrelevancy. They'll barely get 800 votes because they make the mistake, along with Labour and National to a certain extent, of lumping Asians together. And there is no such thing as an Asian community. It doesn't exist. In botany, there's a very large component of Chinese, but that is split between mainland Chinese and those from Taiwan. There's a Korean component. Well, they're not best friends with Chinese people, so you put up a Chinese candidate, you ain't going to get the Korean votes. And then there's the Indian community, and that's split again between Indian Indians and Fijian Indians. Now, Jamie Lee's electorate chair is an Indian. He has 2 committee members that are Fijian Indians, and he has some Asian members on the committee. So to say he doesn't have a connection with the Asian community is actually facetiously, really, Bomber, looking at what you would wish to be true, and that the New Citizens Party is going to make an impact, and it simply isn't. Cam,
you should be making your civic union with Jamie Lee Ross public soon. How great is this candidate in your humble, unbiased opinion?
I've known Jamie Lee since he was 18 and he first stood for council, and he is a safe pair of hands. Belinda McCammon mentioned that in her Stuff article the other night from the debate. There were 0 hits that Michael Wood was able to get on Jamie Lee. He's very well researched. He is, fair to say, from the Conservative side of the National Party, but he is what I describe as a safe pair of hands. He's not going to make a mistake.
And being on the Conservative side of
which is Middle New Zealand.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure those Conservative values of Jamie Lee Ross will match up quite comfortably with the inhabitants of.
Question to both: how well will the New Citizens Party, who met in Beijing to discuss the botany by-election, do? How you say only 800? You think it's going to be?
They will not get over 1,000, and I suspect it'll be like Matt McCartan. They'll get about 800 votes or something like that.
I think you're being pretty generous, but we shall see. I mean, I wouldn't imagine they're going to be short of resources.
Oh no, they've actually got more signs up than Labour Party.
What
yeah.
I think the New Citizen Party is desperately short of is political smarts about the country in which they're operating.
It's very inept sort of behaviour.
If they were to hire Matthew, for example,
or me,
or you're willing to dip
or myself, anybody who actually has made a long time study of New Zealand politics.
Yeah. We can get them over the thousands.
They have the potential to do rather well, but it's a very strange story, the story of the New Citizen Party.
Oh yes.
Yes.
I think it's very much tied up with Chinese corporate machinations in New Zealand.
Absolutely it is.
And the potential for such a party in a country
it's quite large, isn't it?
which is now set to have, 10 to 15% of the whole population.
One thing you guys probably
people
aren't
not
aware
born in New Zealand, that is just being allowed to slide. And a poor showing here, I think, Cameron, may well kill it in its cradle.
The issue that hasn't come out in the media yet is just who is also associated with the New Citizens Party, because it's very interesting the ones who are there supporting them. And we've got the same hangers-on that were involved in the granting of Maori citizenship visa scandal.
Oh,
type.
really?
Yes, and right.
That's right, because there's this weird codicil to their whole
and
mission
there they
statement, and it struck me as utterly bizarre.
As soon as I saw them standing there,
and now you've explained it.
I was a little bit late to the first debate, and I walked in. I said, "Oh, what are those two doing sitting there?" And they had the New Citizens rosettes, and then it all fell together. And I thought they've done a deal.
Because in their original remit, they talk about representing the interests of immigrants.
Yes.
But then they say, but we will reach out to the tangata whenua, and I was thinking, that's a little odd.
Yeah, and it's
and inherently unlikely.
It's that group of people who were selling these fake citizenship.
Who wins, who loses in botany?
Well, I think if I was a betting man, I'd put it on Jamie Lee Rodd.
Who wins, who loses?
Well, it'd be very poor odds on Jamie Lee Rodd. You won't get much return for your money, but I think the TAB would offer $1.01, I think.
Thank you, panel. Coming up, rumours are rife about a new far-right party launching in Epsom. Will Cameron Slater be standing? Citizen A is back after the break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Citizen A. We're reviewing the week with Chris Trotter and that awful Cameron Slater. Issue 3 this week. In a recession as steep as this, the economic pressure makes the political spectrum splinter. Rumours have been circulated for months now about a new political party on the left, and a new rumour last weekend has a new far-right party led by John Banks challenging Epsom. The country wants to know if Cameron Slater will be standing. Chris, you were most disingenuous in a recent column attacking the strategy of a new left party.
No, he wasn't.
But do you think right-wing frustrations could force political representation in Epsom?
I think there's about as much chance of a new right party as of a new left party, Bomber.
I'm not so sure about that.
And all of the enthusiasm in the world will not get around the brutal arithmetic of electoral politics, as I quite genuinely pointed out to you in a recent blog on Bow Alley Road. The numbers just don't stack up, and I mean, I know the left best, obviously, but I'd imagine, and Cameron will tell us, that they don't stack up particularly well on the right.
It's never stacked up. ACT always would say we need to have people vote, party vote ACT because it helps National. It only helped National if they pushed Labour to the left and soaked up the centre to move, to create space on the right. But you're basically cutting up the same pie. And so changing the percentages doesn't actually help ultimately in the end.
Suggested policies for this new far-right party would be bringing back the death penalty and mandatory weekly spankings for children. These policies are simply too left-wing for you. Would Cameron Slater run as a candidate in a new far-right political party led by John Banks?
Look, I've heard of a lot of names brought up. John Banks is one of them, and I can categorically say that John Banks will not be involved with this new party.
Who is?
Look, I reckon that they should actually approach the Allied finance lawyer, Nathan Geddy. I mean, he was in court this week arguing vehemently over Hanover's loan practices not being a sham, and at the very same time crying in the SFO's ear about just how appalling the Hanover business was, and it was a complete lie. If anyone's qualified for politics, it'd be him, being able to carry both sides of those coins.
Who have you heard for this new right party?
The two names that I've heard, and I've heard it from multiple sources that are independent of each other, are Muriel Newman and Colin Craig.
Right.
Colin Craig was a creditable third in the local body elections. Does have a bit of a happy hand clapper constituency.
He does.
But more importantly, has money. But I'm not sure it will do his long-term prospects well being associated with Muriel Newman. But I know absolutely certain that Don Brash and John Banks are not involved.
Chris, to date, National's big blue tent strategy was to keep the centre ground within the philosophical political framework of the right wing. But does the strategy come at a cost to hard right rump-leaning voters who feel John Key isn't going far enough right?
Well, yes, it does. In exactly the same way that a social democratic party like Labour drives Marxists up the wall. But the numbers of people that we're talking about, halfway up the wall, to keep the metaphor going, are so small that in an electorate of close to 2.5 million.
There's not enough on the far right, there's not enough on the far left.
That's right, there's just nothing to be gained by expending all of the energy and all of the money. I mean, Colin Craig, I would have thought by now, had realised, and he should read, Bryce Edwards' Liberation blog here, because Bryce makes this point over and over again. A lot of money does not necessarily mean a lot of votes.
But what it does is it buys you influence. It buys you
influence. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
If you're putting money into a political party, you get the phone call from that funder and you answer that phone. John Key answers that phone.
But that's all it gets you.
Martyn,
the phone answer.
It doesn't work like that at all. All it does is it buys you half-page or full-page ads in the newspapers, and the newspapers say thank you very much.
Well, the slowly sinking tabloid would be wanting those half-page
ads. And you may get a little help from news media who are going to soak up your money, but the problem is unless you're striking a chord with the public, or at least a reasonably large section of the public,
then you're wasting your time.
Then you are wasting your time and your money. And that is why political parties, if they form at all, tend to form around individuals who are already in Parliament and have a constituency large enough to make the formation of a party
like
the
Cam,
party.
New Zealand's first big three policy this year is repealing the repeal of Section 59, nationalising the foreshore and seabed, and making all referendum binding. That's rump National Party vote right there. And it's the reason Key cut Winston out of the future government for fear New Zealand First policy would eat into National's own raw meat electorate. What does Key have to do to pacify the red
I actually agree that those are core national, particularly the binding citizens initiated referendum. Frankly, the people who subscribe to BCIR as some sort of nirvana are cardi-wearing weirdos. I mean, honestly, they are. We vote for politicians so that they can go to Parliament to make the hard decisions. And BCIR says we don't actually need those politicians, and it's bollocks. Those are Winston's policies, but the problem that Winston First has got is Winston.
Who wins, who loses from having a new far-right political party possibly launching Epsom?
Well, I suppose, in a theoretical sense, National and ACT would be potential losers in any such fight. But once again, the numbers of people who are going to participate in what really is a political charade are so small that it's not going to make the difference. Look, Rodney Hyde got 21,000 votes in Epsom. Muriel and Colin,
Colin's a nice guy, but he's
if
not
they
21,000.
If they walked out with 500, to 800
each
votes, they would be doing far better than they have any right to expect.
Who wins, who loses? Who wins, who loses of a far-right political party?
I'm not sure that they can actually tip out Rodney in Epsom, and it won't splinter the vote. I initially thought that this would be disaffected ACT people, and to a certain extent, I think Muriel Newman is a disaffected ACT person
permanently.
But Colin's actually a decent sort of a bloke, and has got some clever ideas, and I really question his wisdom in joining forces with Muriel Newman.
Let's wrap the show with last word. Chris, your last word this week is?
Oh, I think I've probably had it because I came along determined, Bomber, to talk about what we've already discussed at some length, the enormous problems entailed in the setting up of a political party. It's very easy to see a gap, to theorise about the potential for such a party, but there are nuts and bolts elements involved in the process which really do require a tremendous amount of experience in politics to tighten up before anything else happens. And I suspect that on the far right and on the far left, the wisdom and the experience to do such nuts and bolts work just isn't there. And the other thing which I leave you with is this. To get the same percentage of the vote as Matt got in Mana, you would need something like 84,000 votes. Now, even if Hone got half of the Maori Party vote in the Maori seats,
he'll be there by
and
himself.
half of the Maori Party vote in the general electorates, you would still be 50,000 votes or more short of your
Hone would
target.
be there himself.
That's right. So he might as well be an independent.
And irrelevant.
And Hone is not disposed to working with the Pākehā left. And Matt McCartan, frankly, is getting very tired of being associated with the whole New Left
That's your
party.
fault, Bomber.
And the numbers, the raw, brutal arithmetic is this. A New Left party would have to average 756 votes per electorate to do as well as Matt did in Mana.
Your final word, Cam?
And my final word's about democracy. We're lucky, blessed, I'd say, to live in a democratic country. Largely our political parties are democratic. Occasionally you get a disaffected person who would like to drive a truck through a constitution or the rules of the party. And my final word is a warning to those people that they will get undone by the democratic principles of the political parties that they belong to, and they will get a slapping, and it will hurt their career politically for a very long time.
Not quite clear what the threat was there, but you obviously, whoever out there watching it knows that he's coming after you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Cam. Ladies and gentlemen, to my final word. Last week it was Redneck Talk Hate radio host Michael Laws attacking disabled athletes.
Shocking.
This week, it's
Shocking.
the PM romper stomping the poor. John Key's latest comments that beneficiaries who resort to food banks do so out of their own poor choices rather than not being able to afford food is just another embarrassing brain fart from our boy in a bubble, Hawaiian mansion, 40 million in the bank, smile and wave Prime Minister. Now, note it has nothing to do with John Key's bungled mismanagement of the economy. From a GST tax rise that was supposed to turbocharge the economy but result in a $2 billion drop in revenue, it has nothing to do with the soaring unemployment and double-dip recession his government has oversawn, and it has nothing to do with the National Party's bankrupt free market philosophy, the direction of which is now to privatise half our assets for overseas interests. Oh, no. Poor people needing food parcels is all their own fault. As New Zealand families line up for food parcels, Key will sail past them in one of his brand new $6 million BMW fleet cars, wagging his finger at them screaming, "Poor choices," as he laughs all the way to the bank. How's that change feeling, New Zealand? If you like tonight's show, please join our Citizen A Facebook site and connect with other like-minded news citizens, and follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Citizen Bomber Facebook page. Thanks for watching, whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.